So in speaking about shit that's gotten canceled in the wake of this coronavirus, or not coronavirus, Black Lives Matter moment that we're having here, kind of sparked off. I would say that if we're looking at when this all sort of like kind of started in the general public, I would say we start with Ahmaud Arbery. The sort of the feeling of it got sort of like the flames of it started kicking off then, and then the whole George Floyd thing sort of pushed it over a tipping point. And to be perfectly honest, the story that everybody's kind of waking up to, and I'm not gonna lie, just me myself, honestly kind of waking up to it, is Breonna Taylor. The thing that's gone on with that happened to her, and the fact that nobody's uh, nobody's gotten nobody's gone to jail
No,
for it yet is
yeah,
beyond perplexing. Like it's not even it, it's unfathomable that nobody's gotten locked up for that yet. But anyways, um, so in the wake of all this, just like we just talked about with cops, you've seen sort of this shift in that's permeating pretty much every walk of life right now, right? In some way or another. And so in Hollywood, they're also making some changes. We'll see if those changes are permanent. I have my doubts. But one of those changes has been to remove uh, Gone with the Wind from the HBO Max library, at least for the moment. So I'll read a little excerpt here from the Hollywood Reporter. Uh, Gone with the Wind, the Civil War epic, and I already hate how this is worded, but the Civil War epic, considered a classic of American cinema, has temporarily been pulled from HBO Max. The move comes as media companies reappraise content in light of nationwide protest over police brutality and systemic racism after the death of George Floyd, a black man killed by Minnesota police earlier on Tuesday. Paramount Network canceled the long-running police reality show Cops, as we talked about before. Long considered controversial for its depiction of black people and its positive view of slavery, Gone with the Wind faced renewed scrutiny after an op-ed by 12 Years a Slave screenwriter John Ridley, published in the published in the Los Angeles Times on Tuesday. In the op-ed, Ridley called on HBO Max to consider removing Gone with the Wind from its platform, as the film had its own unique problem. It doesn't just fall short, and this is a quote from, I believe, Ridley himself, doesn't just fall short with regard to representation. It is a film that glorifies the antebellum South. It is a film that, when it is not ignoring the horrors of slavery, pauses only to perpetuate some of the most painful stereotypes of people of color, Ridley wrote. So there's more to the article, but I'll pause there and have us weigh in on this. What did you think when you saw this? Have you ever seen Gone with the Wind? Let's start there.
fuck no, never seen Gone. And um, I have no emotional attachment to this movie. I haven't seen it. I don't think it's a classic. Like, I don't really have any commentary about the film it said. Or the film itself, but like this does remind me of something that my brother said yesterday, which I thought was like very interesting and insightful. Right, when we look at like things in history that are revered or looked upon in a positive light, even though those things weren't necessarily positive themselves. Right, around the country we see statues of um, uh, you know fucking generals and lieutenants and colonels and commanders that were a part of like this, the Soviet army, right? Like being torn down. And there are a lot of people who are upset about that. Like, why are you tearing down statues of Colonel Lee or whatever? Um, he was a historic figure, right? Where it's like, well, he was a historic figure for fighting against the North to maintain slavery in the South. Like, why are we keeping his statue up? So the comment that my brother made was about like, we were talking about like the protesting versus like the looting and the rioting that's going on around the country, right? And how, I don't I'm not gonna go out and do those things. I'm not gonna riot, I'm not gonna burn down any buildings, but I understand like where the anger and frustration comes from. And then we like went into the conversation about like, all right, what if you burn something down or something burns down, what gets burned down? Like burn down a Walmart, but don't burn down that like beautiful historic building or that brown stone uh you know home, right? Well, it's like at the same time, like fuck that brownstone, right? If we're gonna create change, you can't really try and save some of the past because, oh, well, I like that piece of the past. It looks prettier. Like I enjoyed that little thing. No, I mean sometimes you just gotta say fuck it, burn it down. I mean, I'm sure there are people who love Gone with the Wind, but this shit was racist. Fuck it, get that movie out of there.
Um, yeah, I partly feel the same way. And let me explain. Um,
No, you don't get to explain. You have to agree with me. That's how this
yeah, you know
works.
what? Fair enough. Since you said that, I wholly agree with you. I have no dissenting opinions whatsoever. Um, uh, yeah. So the reason why I say I partly agree, partly disagree, is that okay, we have what's called, or what I've in short time dubbed the Eminem paradox. What do I mean by this? What do I mean by the Eminem paradox? For those who would indulge me for a second, Eminem, I forget whether it was last year or the year before, right? It was, I think, maybe 2018. He had a very infamous beef with Machine Gun Kelly, right? MGK. They had this back and forth. Some words were said. Uh, MGK comes out with this song. Eminem. The onus was then on Eminem to perhaps respond. Eminem had a dilemma. Should I respond or should I just leave it? Because if I respond, then I'm gassing MGK's fire, right? He's benefiting off of my resistance, right? If I don't respond, then his words go unimpeded and people think he just rolled over me, right? What do I do? You know? And I feel like that's where we are with a lot of these things that we're now going back and reevaluating, right? The statues, I don't really give a shit about. Go and take them down, and that's because I'm very unsentimental about like statues. Like I really don't give a shit about them, but that's just me. I just don't really give a shit. But so do whatever the fuck you want with those. I don't really care. But movies are kind of a different situation, and the reason why I say that is because, and maybe this does apply to like anything, is like I get the impetus to like take them down. Now, mind you, this particular movie it isn't disappearing from HBO Max's library forever. It's actually only disappearing for a short period of time, and then once it returns from from this hiatus or whatever, they're going to include some sort of like amendment to it, that they're not changing the movie at all, but they're going to add something onto it, like an explainer saying, "Hey, by the way, the movie you're about to watch is pure shit. Enjoy watching it." Is essentially what they're gonna. It's clear.
As fuck. Are you sure you want to watch this?
If you find yourself smiling at any point and watching this, you actually might be a little racist. But just just a disclaimer. um,
Report of who watched it.
yeah, I know. Well, no, because then that gets weird because it's like, what if you're watching it in order? This actually drives to the heart of exactly what I'm saying. Is if you the reason why I call this the Eminem paradox is because just like Eminem had to make that decision with responding to MGK because he didn't want to give him like more gas, right? He didn't want to like have people even think MGK's even like in the same stratosphere as him, right? But um that's what I think about movies like this is that you run the risk, right, of making it so that now people who weren't even thinking about Gone with the Wind are suddenly like, oh my god, I've got to see Gone with the Wind now, and now we've got to see what that whole thing's about. When it's just like, if you never said anything in the first place, I don't think like people in 2020 are really like, oh, Gone with the Wind. That's a cool. And I understand that there's a weird situation in that it's considered a film classic, right? And I don't know if it's that way because of the technical aspects of it being film or because of the story, right? I don't exactly sort of know what the I'm sure I heard about this at some point during my brief stint in film school. But I can't remember what actually people like about it, because I've never actually seen, I've only seen clips of it. I've never actually seen the full film, right? But my worry is that now you make this like, oh my god, that edgy book that we're not supposed to read, but I have it though and I can read it. You run the risk of making it, the myth of this more than it actually is. Whereas if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, hey, how do you feel about Gone Within? I'm like, I don't know. It's a movie. I don't know what the fuck you want me to say. Like, I don't know. Who gives a shit, right? But now it becomes a different conversation of like, oh my gosh, well, like even I'm thinking, oh shit, do I have to go watch Gone with the Wind to see what all the fucking the fuss is about Gone with the Wind now? Even though I had no interest in doing that prior to this. So that's all I'm saying is that when you start to like do shit like this of like removing stuff and you run the risk of having the opposite effect, right? Like when when somebody says something like in a tweet or something like that that they really don't want people to like pay attention to or worry about, the last thing they should do is like tell people that, right? Like, hey, don't do X, Y, or Z, because then people are literally just going to do X, Y, or Z. You're asking them exclusively to do X, Y, or Z. The best thing you do is not say a goddamn thing about it, and nobody will give a fuck about it. But I can see where the push and pull of it comes from. I just don't know if it's I don't know if it's the best practice, but I understand. But anyways,
I mean, yeah, I definitely get your side of it, right? And it's like, there are two sides to the coin. There's a side where it could backfire, and now you bring more attention to the thing, right? I also don't think that's a bad thing either, right? Because it's like, all right, if we know that this is a movie that's pro-slavery and depicts the most nasty, vile, uh, you know. Things about like racism and really perpetuates those stereotypes, right? If we know that about this film, and then like let's look at who's protecting it. Like, if we know that those things are true about this movie, who is still like, no, it's a great movie? And I would rather, know who the defenders of this terrible thing are by bringing attention to it than just by letting it be and letting like those defenders and the people who love this like wildly racist movie continue to love it. I'd rather know who they are by forcing them to come out and defend it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess. Yeah. There's another side to that argument that I won't necessarily try to hash out here because I'm not sure if it's like a fully formed thought in my own brain, but like there's an aspect of it that perhaps some people might like the movie, not necessarily because of the content of it, in terms of its glorification of slavery, but perhaps because of like the technical aspects, right? If you're a film buff, perhaps you're looking at this through a different lens than the actual content, which I'm not absolving the person of that. I'm just saying like perhaps they're looking at it through a slightly different lens, but perhaps that's something they need to address. That, hey, like I know you really like this shit, but also it's racist shit. So so why don't we stay away from it? But anyways, let me finish up with the article here. And this is actually one thing that I think is fucking crucial to understand about why this is all so fucked up. So in terms of like the actual movie itself, not for necessarily what HBO Max is doing. So to give you the last bit here, HBO Max said Gone with the Wind will eventually return to the service with a discussion of its historical context and a denouncement of those very depictions of Black people in slavery. So that's what we talked about before in terms of them sort of, when it comes back, it'll come back with something added onto it. But then this is the part that I was like, this is the part people need to fucking pay attention to when they're like, I don't see what the fuck the big deal is. Like, it's fine, right? So Hattie McDaniel, who played Mammy in the film, who's you can see right now, if you're watching this on YouTube, was the first Black person to win an Oscar. She won, I believe, she won Best Supporting Actress. But due to racial segregation at the ceremony, she sat separately from the Gone with the Wind co-stars and at a table in the back of the room. Now, tell me if that's not fucked up, right? That you say, are we not merciful? Are we not kind, right? Hey, you say we're racist, but this Black woman who starred in the film, she won Best Supporting Actress. Oh, but she can't sit with this table with the rest of her cast and crew.
Yeah.
She's got to sit at the others. I mean, it's just how it is. It's just a small thing, but hey,
How it was.
say that one more time.
No, I'm saying like, oh, it's just how it was. That's how things were back then, and it's like that's
Yeah.
bullshit.
So I think that in a nutshell is what like led me to believe like, yeah, come on, like we're what the fuck are we talking about here? This is a racist ass film that glorifies some bullshit. And honestly, it doesn't really have any place in society. But yeah, again, my fear is that perhaps we've given it new life, uh, which can have sort of an opposite effect of what you're intending by essentially getting rid of it. But HBO Max isn't even doing that. So all the people in the comment section who might say, "Oh, I can't believe that I got to go buy a digital, physical copy of the film," you're acting stupid. Calm down. It's not like they're getting rid of the film from the fucking Library of Congress or some shit. Relax. Um, so yeah, we'll move the fuck on to our next story here. And by the way, let us know in the comment section how you feel about it. Do you think it's a good move, bad move that HBO Max has done in getting rid of the film at least temporarily until they can sort of put in an add-on to it to explain how fucked up it is, or do you not? Or are you going to be saying some bullshit as I very much expect you to say in the comments section. Either way, let us know. Any activity helps us out. So, all right, let's talk about another.